Hello, welcome to today's AHS Spotlight. I'm here with
Mrs. Burkett.
Ms. Burkett. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. So how long have you been a teacher at Armstrong?
I have been at Armstrong High School since it opened, so since the 2015-2016 school year.
And how long were you teaching before that?
I started my first job in the fall of 2004, so I have been teaching for a little over 20 years now.
Where'd you start out there?
I went to Maryland after I graduated from college, and I actually was hired to be a Spanish teacher at my first job. So I taught Spanish for the first 6 years of my career, just Spanish. And then when I moved back to Pennsylvania, I taught a combination of Spanish and English. And then ever since we came to Armstrong High School, I've been teaching just ninth grade English.
How does that, how do you feel about that?
I mean, I love ninth grade English. It is the sweet spot for me with English classes. I have taught eighth grade English before. I've taught a variety of public speaking classes, but in regard to English, I just really like ninth graders and I like the content for ninth grade English, so I'm very happy to be in that level for teaching English.
So did you ever have any experience teaching other levels? I know you had eighth grade, but did you ever teach higher level English? Or?
No, I've been in eighth grade in public speaking. I did a public speaking 1 and public speaking 2, and then when I got into ninth grade English, which my first year teaching ninth grade English was 2011, that is where I've stayed. Now I've taught all different levels in ninth grade English, so I've taught inclusion classes, I've taught CP, I've taught gifted honors, but ninth grade is where my sweet spot is.
What are specific parts of English that you enjoy teaching? Are there specific elements of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a language person overall, so I do really enjoy incorporating the grammatical rules and things into English. But when you get into ninth grade, it's kind of a new thing for students because in 7th and 8th grade, they've always had a separate English and reading class. So then in 9th grade, it's like we all that rolled into one. So the reading part is also something I'm quite passionate about. Anyone who has been in my room, I have quite an extensive classroom library. I'm very into trying to encourage students to read for pleasure. I call it choice reading, and that's a big part of my passion within the English class as well. So
I see. As an English teacher, what are some books that you feel students should read?
Honestly, my biggest thing is I'm happy with people reading whatever they want. That's a big push for me because I think a lot of students have it in their mind they don't like reading, but I think that if they just had the opportunity to look and explore different things, they might find they actually, do enjoy reading. As far as what I think is really important in ninth grade English for students to read, Romeo and Juliet is the big Shakespearean piece, and that's important because, as you know, going through the different levels of English, Shakespeare is somebody that you continue to study every year, so I think it's good to have a foundation with that in ninth grade. I'm also really partial to the Odyssey, which I think is another great piece of literature that really influences a lot of other literature that students are going to study over the next course of their other years in English. So I think those are two really good core staple pieces in ninth grade.
After reading the Odyssey in there, I actually bought the graphic copy that we had because I wanted to have a copy of it.
Well, and I like that you brought that up because you were actually one of the first classes that I decided to figure out what's the best way to have these kids read this ancient piece of literature that maybe seems very difficult to interpret or whatever, and that's graphic novels are a great way to kind of rope people in to feel a little bit more confident in reading and understanding things that are a little more difficult to interpret and understand.
Yeah, because initially I bought a copy of the Iliad, and I didn't buy the graphic.
Yeah.
And I read the first page, and then I set it down and didn't pick it back up because I didn't understand what they were saying, and
it can be so confusing because the names are unfamiliar, the locations are oftentimes, but when you have that graphic novel, that reaches another level, especially because a lot of students are visual learners, and that's a way to help them interpret, something that is, like I said, I feel like a staple piece of ninth grade literature, but something that can sometimes feel overwhelming, where, like you said, students start to read it, they're like, I don't want to keep picking up this, it's too hard to understand. So that's my biggest goal, I feel, as an English teacher, is to try to find ways to help students make a connection and not be able to understand what they're reading, because the bottom line is, if not, they're just not going to read. They're going to take the shortcuts and not actually read what they're supposed to, you know?
Yeah. If it means anything to it, I've always felt that the graphic novel helped me really get into it and really enjoy the story.
I really appreciate you saying that.
Thank you. A big point of this interview today was to bring up Senora Barnhart is retiring this year.
Right.
And there's been a lot of talk of who is actually going to get the position. I've heard from many people they believe you would be the most qualified to take that position over.
Well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I know that Senora Barnhart has been a big advocate for wanting me to, you know, try and fulfill the role that she has had in our district for, I think she's been teaching here for like 35 years or something.
She's had a career.
What a gem she is. What an incredible Spanish teacher. I mean, I feel like she has made so many kids fall in love with the language and want to study it. So I do really appreciate how supportive she has been. She's known that I'm very interested in getting back into Spanish, and she's definitely advocating, I think, you know, within her classes and telling students, you know, I think there's a good chance Mrs. Burkett might want to apply for this spot when I leave, and absolutely I'm very interested when the job, you know, if it gets posted.
What do you think the chances are that you end up getting the position?
I mean, I hope, fingers crossed, pretty well. Like I said, when I first moved back to Pennsylvania from Maryland, I actually was first hired to be in a split Spanish position at what was called Kittanning Junior High at the time and West Shamokin. So I split my day between those two places and taught like Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3. And then, you know, I didn't teach Spanish again until I guess it would have been my 2013-2014 school year at Ford City. They went from just having me be full-time English to spilling me into teaching half-day English and half-day Spanish. So never had the chance to teach Spanish here just because we've had a full you know, roster of teachers, but that's what I'm hopeful. If maybe nothing else, I can get a couple of classes to start getting back into it. And I'd be happy with any level or, you know, any type of Spanish class that they would be able to put into my schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I believe at most, like at least go for the AP because that's the passionate ones. Those are the ones who really want.
When I was in high school, I was very passionate about, you know, Spanish and English were my two favorite classes in high school, and I was actually the only student who elected to take like the AP exam whenever I was a senior in high school. I just really loved it. You know, I just have had a passion for it, and it was because I had an amazing teacher. You know, he just really made me love the language, which is why I was so interested in that.
So if it was brought back, do you think they would try to split you, you know, between
I mean,
English?
I think it just depends on, you know, student enrollment. Like I know right now students have been filling out their schedules for next year, and I think it just depends on if, you know, they have a need that they would be able to give me a full day or whoever, you know, the position would consist of a full day, or if, you know, it might just only be a part-time position. But like I said, even if I could have one class, I would be absolutely thrilled.
I believe that covers just about everything I wanted to talk about. Before we go, do you have any, you know, statements you'd like to say, or?
No, I mean, I'm just grateful that you wanted to bring me in and talk, and you made my day when you made your graphic novel comments. So talking about that, talking about my love of Spanish, this is a great interview.
Thank you. Thank you for watching today's AHS-TV Spotlight featuring Miss Burkett. Keep on soaring.